Hello everyone, I am Dr. Manika Gupta. I am an assistant professor at Department of Geology, University of Delhi. Today in this module we will be discussing about microwave remote sensing and its applications. By the end of this module you will be able to understand why microwave remote sensing is important, how is it gaining more importance as compared to the optical remote sensing and thermal remote sensing, and what are the various applications of microwave remote sensing. As you know, microwave represents the EM spectrum which ranges from 1 mm to at least 1 meter. So this range is a long wavelength range which is beyond our sensory locations. That is, it is beyond our visible spectrum and even after the near infrared or the infrared region. So this encompasses a lot of wavelengths and it's actually divided in a lot of bands within itself. The bands which the microwave remote sensing has is actually ranging from L band, which has the highest wavelength of at least 30 centimeter, to the lowest band which is known as Ka band or the Ka band, which has an approximate wavelength of 0.3 mm or 3 mm. Now this Ka band is has the lowest wavelength, so it has high energy, whereas L band has high wavelength because it's inversely related to the frequency, so the frequency is less for the L band. Now why is microwave remote sensing becoming so important these days? Microwave remote sensing is important firstly because due to long wavelength, even for the Ka band, it is able to penetrate the clouds and the atmospheric effects are not seen in the satellite images as they are visible in the optical remote sensing images, example for the MODIS data. So this becomes important. Plus the window is very transparent for the penetration of the microwave radiations in this limit, which is not feasible for the visible data. The visible data or the visible spectrum gets absorbed in the atmosphere and even gets reflected back from the atmosphere itself before reaching the ground surface. So the microwave has a tendency of going as a transparent, or the atmosphere acts as transparent for the EM waves in the microwave region, so that we are able to get the scattering or the reflectance at the ground surface level and not only in the atmosphere level. Secondly, microwave remote sensing is not based on the sun synchronous, or the satellites do not have to have the data in the sun synchronous positions because illumination from the sun is not required. That is the reason the data from the microwave remote sensors can be utilized day and night. So you can gather the information on the whole earth in both the timings during day and even night, which is not possible with the optical data sensors, which need to be sun synchronous because we need light penetration and they are dependent on the sunlight for the reflection to be transmitted back to the receiver of the satellite. So this is the 2 or 3 major differences between microwave remote sensing and the optical remote sensing. Thirdly, or the fourth point would be, because the penetration power is higher, it is feasible to have microwave remote sensing in all the weather around. So whether it's cloudy or whether it's rainy, you can still have the microwave data and you will not miss out, or there won't be a gap in the data, unlike in the optical remote sensing where we miss out lot of days when the cloud cover is high, especially in hilly terrain areas where most of the data products are not good because of the presence of the cloud in the images. So microwave remote sensing has, that is the reason, gained lot of importance and it's being utilized in at least all the fields and applications where it is feasible. Now the microwave remote sensing can also be both active and passive. Usually passive optical remote sensing is where the sunlight is required. Now in microwave remote sensing, the passive term is still being used, but it does not imply that we need sun as the illumination source. And why is that? It is because our Earth's surface or the features on the Earth naturally emit some radiations in the microwave region. So these naturally emitting radiations are captured or transmitted back to the receiver, and which is known as your passive microwave remote sensing. On the other hand, your active microwave remote sensing is a way where a light illumination is provided from the satellite, so a signal is transmitted to the earth. The reflection or the scattered reflection which goes back to the receiver is taken, and that is what is your active remote sensing. Now, active remote sensing can also provide us with more accurate results because we know the quantity of the transmission signal and we can determine how much of it is actually received back by the receiver. So, it helps us in accurate estimation of the image what we are intended to do. Secondly, if we look at the passive remote sensing, the signal which is emitted or reflected back is actually can be reflected or emitted from the surface, or it could be even from the atmosphere. So whatever is it, it's taken up by the passive remote sensing receiver. Now in passive remote sensing, as I suggested, we undertake, or receiver has to take the emitted radiations. Now these emitted radiations in the microwave region are actually very low. So to capture those very low emissions, the spatial resolution becomes coarser. So when we talk about active remote sensing, we can have a finer resolution, but when we are talking about the passive remote sensing, our resolution actually becomes very coarse. For example, the ESMOS satellite and the SMAP satellite, which were launched by ESA and NASA respectively for soil moisture estimation, actually the resolution for those, spatial resolution for these satellites was approximately 40 kilometers. However, on the SMAP, that is the reason they also have the radar data there, which was supposed to reduce or increase the spatial resolution of the captured soil moisture data from there. Now in active remote sensing, backscatter emissions are received. The amount of emissions which are received is actually dependent on the emissivity of the surface on which we are targeting. The emissivity is actually a comparison of the emissions based on a real black body material. So the value, because it's a ratio, it depends in the range of 0 to 1. All natural bodies or all natural objects actually have an emissivity in the range of usually 0.7 to 0.95. So that is the emissivity dependence of the emissions. Once you know this, you can also understand that the microwave scattering is dependent on a lot of parameters. Now what are these parameters which affect the microwave scattering? These are, first is your surface roughness or smoothness. What do we imply by this? Suppose we have a surface, so this same surface will appear smooth or rough depending on the wavelength of the microwave. So suppose this is your transmitted microwave data and this is your reflected. So this is your incidence angle and this is your reflected angle. So how do we know that the surface will be treated as rough or smooth? Is based on the equation h is less than lambda by 32 cos theta I. So lambda is the microwave frequency wavelength and h tells if this value is less than this value, then the surface is considered as smooth. So depending on your lambda, h can increase and decrease. So the same surface can appear as smooth or rough in different bands of the microwave region. So as you can see in the given table, what is the range of h where the surface will be smooth or intermediate. So as you can see in the table, we have 3 bands chosen here which have different lambda values and the lambda is increasing. So you can see as the lambda is increasing, the value of h is also increasing. So at lambda equal to 25 centimeter, a surface which would have been rough in the K band category is considered smooth in the L band category. So when you are suggesting a surface to be smooth or intermediate, you need to understand and specify which band you are considering, whether it's the low frequency band K band or is the high frequency band, that is your L band. Now when we are talking about longer wavelengths, with the increase in the wavelength, the penetration power also increases. So that is why the surface appears to be smoother. because the penetration is far more inside the surface, though the backscattering is less. So if you have a higher wavelength, so your backscattering would be less here. However, if the frequency or the wavelength is low, frequency would be higher but the wavelength is low, then the same surface you would have shorter wavelength here and the scattering will appear to be high and you will have more scattering, and so because of this more scattering the surface will appear to be more rough in this case. So this is the reason with the increase in penetration you have a smoother surface. So when you look at the L band and the C band or the X band, L band has the highest wavelength compared to the C or the X band. So when SMAP was launched, it had L band. In L band, you can have better soil moisture capacity, or you can estimate the soil moisture better on the surface because it has the capacity of penetrating the canopy of the plants or the forested area. But in case of your C band or X band, the penetration power reduces because the wavelength is reduced. Now in the C band it stays only to the upper canopy structure, and in the X band it is a little bit lower as compared to the C band, but it's still in the medium. So if you have here 3 trees and this goes your C band, so C band will reflect from this. Your X band may come here and then there would be a reflection, while for this there might be this and then the reflection. So you can see the penetration depth increases as the wavelength increases. So this is one of the most important concept when we are using the microwave remote sensing technique. After this, what else are the parameters which determine how will the scattering take place? Now here a perfect reflection would have been, suppose you have a very smooth surface, this is your incident angle or the transmission angle and it completely reflects back. This is a perfect situation and it's known as specular reflection. However, if you have a rough surface here and the surface is rough, so what will happen, the transmitted would come here, energy would come here and the reflection would be back scattered. So this is known as diffused scattering. Other than this, there is also a volume scattering. What is volume scattering? Now this was here, it penetrated, but when it's reflected back, sometimes it doesn't go back completely. What will happen? It will get stuck here and it might get reflected in this direction. From here also, then again back here. So as it gets in the atmosphere, it's meeting more of the roadblocks as in the form of your canopy, and that's why the reflection is different as compared to what would have been in the first case. So as your requirement, you need to first understand what is the need and which band you want to utilize. Now the microwave scattering not only depends on the wavelength or the frequency, it also depends on the dielectric constant. So the dielectric constant varies with the soil moisture content in the surface. So if it's a wetter soil, a dielectric constant would be different as compared to for the drier soil. That is why the L band data has been successfully used for mapping soil moisture data. Other than this, the surface characteristics of being an homogeneous or inhomogeneous, similar to the surface being rough or smooth, is also one of the characteristics which determine how much scattering is going to take place. Lastly, and the most important point is polarization. Now, polarization implies that we can orient the direction of the electric field. Now, unpolarized light, if is transmitted, it will reflect back in any of the directions. It would be like a diffuse scattering. However, radars have a system where we can have polarized light, either horizontal polarization or vertical polarization. Now, active sensors can measure the backscatter as copolarized. That is, we can have the transmission in horizontal polarization as well as the reflection back can be horizontally polarized. as similarly, we can also have cross polarization. What do we mean by cross polarization? Cross polarization is the transmittance is oriented in the horizontal direction while the reflectance or the receiving is in the vertical. So you have H and V combination here. So for the active remote sensing or the active radars, the polarization follows 4 of the combinations, that is horizontal horizontal, vertical vertical, horizontal vertical and vertical horizontal for the transmittance and the reflectance respectively. However, in the passive remote sensing, you can have only one of these because you do not have a transmittance, you only have a backscatter which is emitted. So it can be oriented either horizontally or vertically. So that is the main difference between an active and the passive regarding the polarization. So if you have a radar data, it can have 4 combinations. If you have a passive radiometer, you can have either horizontal or vertical. So these are the main points which allow a kind of microwave scattering which will happen and how much is received by the receiver. Now in active remote sensing, we have 2 kinds of radar systems. One is the imaging radars, another is the non-imaging radars. Non-imaging radars are utilized for measuring the elevation. Now this elevation data is actually important as we have studied for hydrological modeling and other parameters. So in non-imaging radar, it helps us to measure the elevation, and an example of a non-imaging radar is altimeter. In altimeters, what does it do? It measures the time taken to transmit the signal from the satellite to the ground. So if this is our ground and this is our satellite, so the time taken for the pulse from the satellite to reach the Earth's surface and then reflect back from this location back to the satellite at the receiver, this total time is calculated, and that tells us the difference in the location of the surface and the satellite. So based on this, we can actually know where the surface which we are looking for or the object is located on the Earth's surface. This is the basic advantage of using the altimeter data. Now how it measures the height? Because the altimeters are actually measuring anything at a nadir point or straight line. So how much time takes place for this round trip of the transmission and the reflectance back is actually the height or the elevation of the considered object. So that is the usefulness of using a non-imaging radar system. The other radar system is the simple radar system, which is also known as the imaging. Now imaging here is similar to the photograph taken, but it is different because it's in the microwave region and it's not in the visible region as in the photographs. Now in the radar or the imaging system, it measures 2 components. One component is your the amount of the reflectance or the backscattering measurement, and the second is the time taken or time delay in the echo in going back to the satellite. So these are the 2 things which are measured in the radar system. So how does this work? We will look at in the figure. So as I suggested that by measuring the time delay between the transmission of the pulse, we can measure the backscattered echo, and if you see we have 2 surfaces here, A and B. So we can even know the distance of both the surfaces from the radar. Now if we want to notice whether the radar can distinguish between 2 surfaces here or not. So for though it has to so to distinguish between these 2 images, the slanting distance should actually be less than PL by 2, or it should be greater than PL by 2. Here the distance is less than PL by 2. What is PL? PL is your 1 pulse length. So if this distance is less than pulse length by 2, then these 2 objects will be considered as one single object, and the radar will not distinguish between these two surfaces separately. So this is represented by your spatial resolution. So your spatial resolution for a radar should actually be equal to at least PL by 2 to have a distinction here. The next image shows that other than your spatial resolution, there is a ground resolution also. So this range resolution was equal to PL by 2 in the previous image. Now this is the equation which calculates the ground resolution or the ground range resolution. For calculating this, C here represents your speed of light, tau is your pulse length, and theta d is your depression angle or the depression angle here. So once you have this ground resolution, you can actually know how much distance should be there for the two objects to have a separation. Now here you can see a synthetic aperture radar. So how a synthetic aperture radar is helpful? You know, we need to increase the resolution and the antenna length determines our spatial resolution. So in synthetic aperture radar, what we have done is, our original antenna is a small size, but mathematically it increased and it's synthesized in a long way so that the spatial resolution can be increased even though an original radar or the antenna is smaller. So you can here see the resolution is increased with a synthetic radar itself. Now microwave remote sensing can be easily used in a lot of applications like atmospheric and hydrological. In atmospheric, it can be utilized for measuring the atmospheric profile, while in hydrology it has been utilized for measuring the soil moisture content, sea ice content, coastal areas, elevation details, and a lot more of these applications are available. Lot many satellites have been launched and few more are being launched or being in the process of being launched, and this is already being given in the e-text, and you can understand how many applications are available for the microwave remote sensing. So with this, I would like to summarize the microwave remote sensing. The major thing in microwave remote sensing you would have to understand is its wavelength range, which varies from 1 mm to 1 meter. And this high range allows it to be easily penetrable from the atmosphere and reach the Earth's surface. It provides the data both during day and night. Plus, even the passive remote sensing, even though the term passive is being used, it's still not sun synchronous, and it still is kind of an non-sun synchronous satellite data because we are measuring an emission of the reflectance from the Earth's surface, like the temperature is emitted when the surface body is heated in the thermal remote sensing. That is why even though a passive remote sensing is there, still it is not dependent on the sunlight. So we can have the measurements from both the passive and the active data during day and night in all the weather conditions. Plus, we have the penetration depth also. Lastly, I would like to say in microwave remote sensing, it can be utilized for majority of applications because of its undestructive nature and it being transparent to the atmosphere. I hope the references provided for you in the e-text would be sufficient to understand more in this, because it's a huge topic and lot more needs to be understood in this microwave remote sensing. And thank you.